So in the previous lecture, we said that theory of computation is all about formalizing the notion of computation, and we formalized this encoding of data as strings, right? We discussed concatenation of strings and all those things. Now we will give an overview of this model of computation. Okay, a model of computation is it's a model of computer, say some kind of machine, but which we describe mathematically. So I also mentioned earlier that there are generally two different paradigms. One is kind of a machine, another is kind of a grammatical rule. So one type of models are called automata, this machine-like models, and this are grammars. So today we concentrate on overview of all the computational model that we are going to study in this whole course. Okay, before we discuss the models, we need to understand what a computational problem is, because our model is going to solve a computational problem. Okay, so before we try to model something which is solving a computational problem, we need to formalize what a computational problem is. Okay, now after a few slides you will see that we will land into this definition. Okay, so given an alphabet sigma and a language over this alphabet sigma, the problem is that for all string in sigma star, decide whether this string is also in the given language, right? So the language is given. Given means it's somehow defined, and then you have to design a computer which can decide for any string whether or not this string belongs to this language or not. Now this looks very formal and intuitively, and what we want our computer to do is take some input and produce some output, right? So the output is a function of the input. So from here we need to somehow reach this definition. So the first step is simplifying assumption. So this simplifying assumption that our output is either yes or no. Okay, so it's a binary output. Now immediately you may think that, okay, this is a very severe restriction. Instead of arbitrary function, we are just concentrating on yes or no. So eventually perhaps we'll be convinced that it's the right thing to do, to concentrate on these problems. Now a lot of problems, this intuitive notion of problem that you have, so a lot of these problems naturally fall into this category. That means the output is naturally yes or no. So to make some examples, say if you are given a word, so now by a word we can formalize that as a string over some alphabet. So we may ask whether this word is a palindrome or not. So palindromes are words that read same when if you read it forward or backward, like say madam, M-A-D-E-M. So given a string, decide whether it's a palindrome or not. Or given an integer, decide whether it's divisible by 3. Okay, the answer is yes or no. So similarly you can have all sorts of inputs and a yes no answer for that, right? So all you are doing is given input from some set of inputs. Okay, you are deciding whether that input has some specific property or not. and you are doing it for all inputs coming from that universe, right? So that is important. So this kind of problem is known as decision problem. Okay, so you are just making a decision, so they are called decision problem. The output is either yes or no. Okay, so and we started with this thing that okay, you give some input and your computer is is supposed to produce some output which is a function of input. So this sort of problems are called functional problem. You are essentially computing some function. And now we are saying that we will concentrate on decision problems, which is that given this input which is coming from some universe, whether it has certain property or not. So the answer is yes or no. Now, why restricting ourselves to decision problems? Because remember, the final goal of complexity theory or theory of computation is to classify problems according to their hardness. Okay, so you want to determine how hard it is and what sort of computers are needed to solve that problem, or whether it can be solved at all by some kind of computer. So often it is the case that if you are given a functional problem, okay, so we can construct a corresponding decision problem such that if we can solve the functional problem, so it's if and only if condition, so we can solve the functional problem if and only if we can also solve the decision problem. So in that regard, the hardness of the functional problem and the decision problem that we construct from the functional problem, so their hardness are kind of equal. If you can solve one, you can solve the other problem. Okay. To give you an example, take this functional problem. So given an integer x as input, find some function fx. Suppose this function is some monotonically increasing function of integers or something. Okay. So a corresponding decision problem could be given a pair of integers x and y as input, decide whether this fx is less than y or not. Okay. Another example is say it's more concrete, that given an integer x, find a non-trivial factor of x if there is any. So non-trivial factor means excluding the factor 1 and x itself. So a corresponding decision problem will be given x and y. Decide whether x has any non-trivial factor less than x, less than y. Okay. So as I said before, our goal is to classify problems according to their hardness. And when we do such conversions, if we can estimate the hardness of this decision problem, so then we can also estimate the hardness of the functional problem. Okay, so that is why we can restrict ourselves to the decision version only. So just to explain how these two problems are equivalent. So you see that the decision problem is clearly solved if you can solve the functional problem. You find some non-trivial factor of this x, so you can completely factorize this x and you can know all the factors and you can decide whether one of this is less than y or not. The other direction, so if you can solve this decision problem, then you can also solve this functional problem. So this other direction can be done using something like bisection method. You already know bisection method. So suppose you want to find an non-trivial factor of some number, so you start around square root of that number and ask whether it has a factor less than, say, this value. If yes, then you take half this value then again half this value, then again half this value. So here you see that the answer is no, right? So it changes from yes to no. So you know that there must lie a non-trivial factor which is between 250 and 125. So you take a middle point, something like that, and then again ask. So you again see that the answer is yes. So you know that a non-trivial factor must lie between this value and the previous lower bound. So in this way, you know bisection method, right? It's precisely the bisection method. So now you can see that this functional problem, that find a non-trivial factor of this thing, where you are supposed to find an answer, not just yes no. You need to produce an integer. So that problem is reduced to a problem with yes no answer. A series of instances of this yes no, right? So So to summarize, to defend our decision of restricting ourselves to the decision problem, first of all, it's not the case that theory of computation only is concerned about decision problems. It does also study functional problems, and in our course also we will see that we will define a model of computation with yes no answers, but that model as a byproduct can also compute some value, and even beyond those models, which is outside our syllabus, you have other complexity classes where you need to address the functions. So it's not the case that theory of computation is completely about decision problems, but the most of the part is about decision problems, and that's precisely because of the reason that our goal is to classify problems according to hardness, and that we can do by reducing the problem to decision problem, and obviously the decision problem is easier to handle. Okay, so as I said, we will mostly consider decision problems with some few exceptions. So going back to this definition of computational problem, now that we have reduced ourselves to only decision problems, so see, we want to reach this definition. Okay, take all strings over some alphabet and decide whether that string belongs to some language or not. So a decision problem can very easily be viewed something like this. So again, take this example. Given an integer, you need to decide whether it's divisible by 3 or not. So your universe of input is the set of all integers, right? So it's an infinite set, and then you take a subset of U, this L, which is the set of all integers divisible by 3, right? So L is a subset of U, and then your problem is, given some integer in U, determine whether X also belongs to L, right? It's as simple as that. So this is your problem for all element X. Okay, so when we talk about computational problem, it's about solving the problem for all inputs coming from some universe of inputs, right? So if you are talking about a particular X, if you are asking the question for some specific X, so that will be called a problem instance, right? So this X is a problem instance. Again, if you take a word and ask if this is a palindrome, as I mentioned before, a word is a palindrome if it reads same forward and backward. So this madam or nurses, so this sort of words. So again, the universe of input is the set of all words, and this L that we are talking about is the set of all words that are palindromes. Again, L is a subset of U, and the problem is for all X in U, decide whether X belongs to L or not. Again, some specific X we are talking about, if you are talking about some specific X, that is a problem instance. Okay, the problem is when you ask it for all X. So again, to summarize what we saw in the previous two examples, the inputs are coming from some set U, and the computational problem, so that is completely characterized by some subset L of U. Okay, so if you see this problem is completely captured by this set L, so they are interchangeable. We can interchangeably use the term switch between this L and the problem. Okay, so, and the problem is for all X in U. So I'm always mentioning this part, that to be a computational problem, you need to solve it for all X in U. Okay, and it's a decision problem, so decide whether X belongs to L or not. Okay, so if you are asking this problem for a particular X in U, given some specific X in U, if you are asking whether this X belongs to L for this particular X, so then that will be a problem instance. And as I said, we can just say that X is a problem instance, so both are interchangeable. So this statement itself is a problem instance, or you can just say that X itself is a problem instance. And it's very important that you do not confuse between the computational problem, so here the computational problem and a problem instance. Okay, and now just to test whether you understood this concept or not, I'm just try to figure out whether this 1, 2, 3, 4 are problems or problem instances. The answer is given. So now if I ask you to decide whether this statement is true, that all even numbers are sum of two primes. Okay, so is it a computational problem? So you see that for all even numbers, and then you instantly jump into the conclusion that it's a computational problem. So that's not the case. Okay, so you see, what is the set of inputs? It's not that you are giving some set of integers and you are asking for each of them whether the property is true for that or not. So this is a statement. This is a statement in itself. Okay, this is a mathematical statement, and all you are asking is that for this particular statement, for this particular claim, whether this claim is true or false. Okay, so there is no set of inputs here. Similarly, if you ask for a particular even number, so that is also not a computational problem, right? Now this, while reading this, you may confuse this with this. So just try to understand the difference. Here the problem is that for all integer X, decide if following statement is true, that X is even and X is sum of two primes. Okay. So obviously for all odd integers, this statement will be false, and then for all even number, the statement will be something true or false. So in fact, this you may recognize as Goldbach's conjecture. Now again, so this statement depends on a particular x. So for a particular x, this will be a problem instance, right? And the instances are coming from the set of all integers, right? So yeah, so our universe of input is the set of all integers, and the L, the set that determines the problem is the set of all even integers, which are sum of 2 primes, because anyway the odd numbers are not in this set, right? So this 2 can be seen as a instance of this computational problem, right? So here the value of x that we are taking is 10 to the 100. Okay. So it's very important. Take some time, if required, pause the video and try to understand the difference between 1 and 3. Okay. So in case of 1, this whole statement is the input, and this is the only input. There is no other inputs, and this whole statement is the only input, and you are asked to determine whether it's true or false. So in this case, the set is the set of all integers, and here you are trying to figure out this statement for each of this x's. So now consider 4. For all hypothesis H in number theory, decide if H is true. Now, a hypothesis you can see as an input. You can write it down using some mathematical notation, right? This for all there exists, whatever. If you have studied formal logic, you know that you can express statements in number theory in first order logic or second order logic, whatever, right? So you can express it using some kind of string, any hypothesis in number theory, and given that string, you are asking whether that statement is true or false, right? So this is interestingly a computational problem. So here the universe of input is the set of all hypotheses, right? And the L that we are talking about is the set of all true hypotheses. So you are given an element in U, and you are asking whether that element belongs to L or not. And now you see that interestingly this one can be seen as a problem instance of this computational problem. Okay, so there is an instance because what is the input? The input is this whole statement, as I mentioned before. This entire thing is the input. So though I have written it as a plain English statement, you can formalize this thing with all sorts of this first order logic formalism, and you can define alphabet for that and encode that as a string. So yeah. Okay, so again coming back to this picture, now we have decision problems, and we know what a computational problem is. So the inputs are coming from some universe. Now in the previous lecture we saw that these inputs need to be encoded as strings, right? So whatever you have here, whether it's an integer or whatever, so you need to encode this thing as strings in order to consider the set of inputs. So your set of inputs will always be a set of strings over some alphabet. Okay. So in fact I gave this example before in the first lecture, that this if your input is an integer, you can encode this integer as a string over this alphabet. So here again these are not numbers. So I had a detailed discussion about this when we mentioned that symbols are primitive. So these are just symbols. So you have strings over these symbols, And now you want to interpret the strings as numbers because you want to encode these numbers as strings. So you have this function from strings to integers such that for any string x constructed out of the symbols 0 and 1, say x is a binary representation of this integer. Okay, so this f of x is the corresponding integer and this is a binary representation of this number. So now the set of all possible inputs, we say that it's this set of strings rather than saying that it's the set of all integers. Okay, and then the language that we are talking about. So earlier, kind of in a semi-formal setting, we said that the set L was the set of all integers divisible by 3, but now we say that this L, so now this is a language, right? Because this is a set of strings, and if you remember the definition of formal language, a formal language is nothing but a set of string, right? So now this is a set of string. Which set of string? The strings which correspond to integers which are divisible by 3. So this fx is integer, but this is a string, right? So then the problem is, for all strings over this alphabet, decide whether this string belongs to this language that we defined here, right? And a particular problem and a particular string x is again a problem instance, right? Or so again, this palindrome example, now you encode your word as some string over some suitable alphabet. You can choose your alphabet according to your problem. That's not a problem. As long as this is non-empty and finite, it's okay. So and L is just the set of palindromes. Okay, again it's a set of strings over this alphabet, and again you ask whether given a string over this alphabet, given any string over this alphabet, whether it belongs to L or not. Okay, and again a particular x is a problem instance. So finally we come to this setting. So now, by now it should be absolutely clear to you how we you have already figured out that we have already reached this point, because our computational problem is about answering a yes no question for a set of inputs, again for a set of inputs, and these inputs are encoded as strings. So these are encoded as strings, and over a suitably chosen alphabet, as I said, you can choose your alphabet. So the set of all inputs is this sigma star, and the problem is completely characterized by the language L over this alphabet sigma. And what is L? L is precisely the set of inputs for which the answer is yes, right? So that is what we did all in this example 1 and 2, right? So yeah, you take all the yes instances of strings, and that gives you the language over sigma, and then the computational problem is just that. So this given this alphabet sigma and language L over this alphabet sigma for all x. Again, I am repeatedly underlining this point that for all x, for all string in over this alphabet, you need to decide whether this string belongs to this given language or not. Right? So, and what is an instance? So this particular question, that for any particular x, for any particular string in the set of all strings, this question, that is x an element of L, so this is an instance of the problem. Or we can simply say that this element x is an instance. So again, these two are interchangeable. So there should not be any confusion that okay, whether this statement that is X belongs to L is an instance or X itself is an instance, you can use any one of that. I mean, they are essentially equivalent.